The first step in the process is going to be splitting the tube cane. So here we have dry tubes that we've purchased from any number of retailers. The first step is to find the node, and the node is basically the seam of the tube. It's where the strongest point is. Often there will be some irregularities there, so there might be a bump on the inside of the tube, which if you can see here, you can feel it more than you can see it, but there's a little bump on the inside here, like a little ridge. It's also thicker there in the tube if you look at it. Sometimes it'll also be a flat spot on the tube. So if we look at this one, the node is right here, and there's actually a little flat spot there. I know it's hard to see on the video. It's easier when you're actually touching the cane yourself. And the whole purpose of that, of finding the node, is that because it's the strongest point on the cane, it's going to make a strong spot on a reed. So because you don't want it necessarily in a weird place in the reed, we're going to actually split the tube on the node to make sure that it doesn't end up in the middle of a reed. So knowing that this is the node, I'm going to take my splitter right here, and I'm going to line up one of the blades of the splitter with the node like this. Okay. And then I have it set. It's inside the little plastic protective thing. I'm going to take my mallet and very carefully I'm going to tap until it starts to split the cane. Okay. Now this is older cane, so it doesn't split so easily. Be very careful. These are very sharp blades here, and these two pieces didn't split cleanly. But there we have split cane, and it's ready to be pre-gouged, which is a step that we also do dry. So if you wanted to, you could pre-gouge it at this step in the process. Okay, and one thing you might notice is that these are extremely long pieces. It's going to be harder to pre-gouge these because they are so long. So at this point, you can actually cut them with the guillotine here. Often we cut later in the process so that they fit into the gouging machine. But in this step, we're actually going to cut them on the guillotine just a little bit. Not all the way down to size, but I'm going to look for the most straight section of it. So the ends are both a little bit warped. So I might cut off both warped sides like this. To then make sure that it will fit easily into the pre-gouger. Now, if you want it to cut it all the way to size, you just want to make sure that when you cut it to size, you cut a little bit from both ends because the tubes have been hit in transit, and they're a little more damaged at the very end. Like if you can compare, you can see that the whatever they're called, vascules or whatever, are closed off here. They're damaged, and here they're more open because I just cut it. So in order to cut it to size, you can see in the frame. Okay, you can see that there's this measuring device here. It takes it to 120 millimeters. So I'm just going to make sure that I cut a little from both sides. Of course, I already cut this piece, but let's pretend I didn't. So we're going to make sure I cut at least a little bit from both sides, and then I'm going to try and get the straightest part of the cane. And I hold it, I put it in the little bed here, and that should cut this to the perfect size to then pre-gouge, soak, and it'll fit in the gouger, and it'll be a good size for making a reed. Today we're going to do pre-gouging. We've got our stationary push-through pre-gouger, our wooden dowel. You can also use the plastic pusher, our hammer, and our split cane. It was split from tubes, dry, and it's still dry. We're going to do pre-gouging dry. So you're going to situate this in the end of the pre-gouger. It might stick over the end. You can cut it a little shorter. It makes it a little easier because then you just put the pusher right in behind it. And you're going to hammer it very gently. Then you have a nice piece of pre-gouged cane. It looks a little flatter on the end, and it's meant to save the gouger blade. Okay, so we'll put that to the side. Okay, so now this cane is ready to be soaked for 3 to 5 hours and then put through the gouger. And always remember to clean up your mess at the end. Now we have soaked our pre-gouged cane here for 3 to 5 hours. That should be plenty of time. And we are ready to gouge it. So you'll notice the gouger is protected by having this little piece of paper towel in here. I'm going to go ahead and remove that. And we should note that we've also cut these pieces down to the exact size so they'll fit in the gouger. So you notice that when you lay it in the bed, it should fit and not wiggle too much in between the two springs that hold it down. So important to note that the gouger can go past where the little spring is that's holding it, but if you start here, you'll hit the blade on the spring and it will damage the blade. And same at this end, if you start or pick it up here, the blade will get hit by the spring and it will damage the blade. So you always start the gouging in the middle and you pull it back and then gouge forward. Okay. Notice how when I get to the end, I never pick up. I always pull it back to the middle if I'm going to pick it up. But I do pull all the way back to the start and push all the way to the end. But I keep it down because it will spring up at this point and damage the blade. Okay, now if it starts taking some cane off, what you might need to do is clean where the blade is to make sure that the blade is making contact with the piece of cane. Okay, and when it stops, I'll clean it one more time and make sure. Taking any more off, when it stops taking some off, we're going to take the piece of cane out. We're going to turn it around and make one more pass on this side just to make sure that it's even. Okay, and you see that it took a little off the other side. Okay, now at this point we're going to let it dry, and the way we're going to let it dry is curve side down so that it doesn't warp as it dries. And it does need to dry for several days in order to be fully dry and ready for the next step of the process. Now, of course, the most important part at the very end is to clean up when you've finished. Make sure you dry the machine, and you're going to replace the piece of paper towel that lives here to protect the blade. So make sure you clean up the blade, clean off the machine, throw everything in the trash, replace the blade, and put it back where it belongs. If you notice any issues with it, please let me know as soon as possible so that I can readjust it. After you've cleaned up and reset the machine and you have a whole bunch of pieces, you can lay them flat like this all on one level, or if you'd like to stack them to take up a little less space, you can keep them curved side down, but alternate them so there's some airflow so they don't slip into right behind another piece of cane. But this way, you can make a little tower and it takes up less space in the reed room. And don't forget to clean up.